Morning, Anna.
Good morning.
Morning, Jeff.
Hey, Anna.
Yeah,
I have a quick question for you. Is John McDonough a water or wastewater engineer?
he is a water engineer, but he does both. So he's really good, especially at small system wastewater stuff. And he's very good at hand holding, but also being a little gruff.
All right, well, it is 7 a.m. and I want to be respectful of people's time this morning. I know it's a bit early. Thank you everyone for joining, and a big thank you to Autumn and Anna for both being here just to answer questions and talk a bit about the ARPA Minimum Allocation Grant Program that is available to conservation districts through their counties. I think everyone on this call knows Autumn Coleman and Anna Miller from DNRC at this point. With that, I will hand it over to you both. So thank you. And I don't know if it might be helpful as I hand it over for you to give a quick overview of the Minimum Allocation Grant Program.
Sure. If I can share screen, I can just kind of walk you guys really quick how to get there. Never hurts.
Yeah, and I think I tried to make you a co-host.
Okay.
So you should be able to do that.
All right. So if you just go to arpa.mt.gov, you'll land here on this main page. And if you remember the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds, the legislature divvied them up into these different silos. So, you know, you may be interested in stuff beyond just water and sewer, communications, economic transformation, health and human services, housing and rental assistance, and K through 12. I don't know much about these other silos or their commissions because we've been pretty busy on the water and sewer piece. So just to let you know, even like zooming out just a bit, that there's a lot more going on out there. A couple of things that I just wanted to, you know, put these tools in your toolbox is, so the local governments, if you are curious as to how much your local government, like either city or county, received, you can go to this local governments page. Here's the information on how they submit for their funds. But in here, there's the NEU calculations that downloads the table of how, you know, what each city, county, and local government got. It's not going to show up on my screen share, but if you were curious, it's there. If it was a county or a larger city, Billings, Great Falls, or Missoula, you would go to the US Treasury link here to find out that information. So that's something that our money gets often confused with this money. So the money that went directly to those local communities, so again, cities, counties, towns, that has the same rules that we had. So backing out here, you know, there was like 6 approved uses for those funds. And, you know, one of them was water and sewer and broadband infrastructure. The other was this economic transformation and stabilization and workforce development. And I think that's where the premium pay came out. I can't remember what was in health and human services, but they also allowed funding for capital projects to improve HVAC systems, so people could work safely, and then housing and rental assistance, and then assistance through K through 12. So essentially, yeah, go ahead, Anna.
I was just gonna say, under that Health and Human Services, you guys are in touch with your communities. And you might just help to know that some of the things they're doing is they're trying to help people who, maybe worked at a restaurant and the restaurant itself, couldn't pay their utilities because there were no customers because of the pandemic coming in. Some of those programs I don't think will be fully stood up maybe until August, September-ish is what we're hearing. But if you have people in your community who couldn't pay their utility bills, whether it be water and sewer, Northwestern Energy, things like that, and businesses that couldn't, there is going to be some help for those people who were low to moderate income, which probably are a lot of service workers, to go in and they won't get the money directly, but if they owe the town or the city, $300 in water and sewer bills, or they owe Northwestern Energy, $500 in power bills, that there is some help for that. So you should let your constituents know in some of these communities that have really been hit that some of that will be coming online. And like Autumn said, this website is really a good resource for that, and probably people will be hearing more about that. But just so there's different things, and like Autumn said, for the schools to help them with their HVAC systems, because one of the things we heard about was the air and the transmission and that being available. So there is more to come in this rollout. So thank you.
But what I was going to say is that, so this is how the state is divvied up their portion of that, the fiscal recovery funds. But each of the communities, so the cities, counties, and towns have these same rules. So the rules that we're playing by are the same rules that they're playing by. So the state enacted House Bill 632 to divvy up the money based on what they understood of the ARPA Act. And then the counties and towns are supposed to divvy up their money similarly. And they have to report to Treasury on how they decided to spend that money, and they have to do the reporting. So all of the rules that we ended up laying on the water and sewer piece, which is one of those silos, are the same rules those local communities are going to have to follow if they're going to spend the money on water and sewer. So just as food for thought, that I feel like there's a perception that the counties can spend the money on whatever it is they want. And what the federal guidance said is that for economic transformation, K through 12, housing, rental assistance, and human services, they have to have a COVID tie to that. So they have to demonstrate, economic impacts from COVID in order to justify spending on these things. Whereas in water, sewer, and broadband, they did not have to have that tie. Essentially, what the federal government said is that, during COVID, people probably weren't paying their bills. They probably weren't paying their utilities. And so that water and sewer infrastructure took a hit during that time. And that in order for the country to recover financially or economically, that investments in water and sewer and broadband are essential so that communities can move forward. So we get into water and sewer, which you guys have heard me, prattle on about now for quite a while. And just a couple of things on our webpage that I just wanted to, there's not that many pages to this one, so it's not too hard to get lost, but a couple of things right up top, we have the commission meetings page. So we're part of the Infrastructure Advisory Commission. And if you go to the commission meetings page, we do post the next meeting, as well as when the agenda and handouts are available, we post them here. We do media releases. We also do the Gov delivery emails, which I know Rebecca has been diligently forwarding to you guys. If you want to sign up for our e-news, you can do it there. We've also been sending our Gov delivery emails to the Conservation District list that DNRC maintains. So you guys might be getting those twice, but better than 0 times, I suppose. And then over here in the corner is the logo for the Department of Commerce. So the Department of Commerce actually provides technical assistance for communities that want to apply. So they've been joined at the hip with us since the beginning of this whole program, and they are hiring staff and hiring engineers that will be able to help communities apply for these grants. So so if you want to access Department of Commerce staff, you use this service portal, request grant application assistance, and you'll get connected with Department of Commerce. Backing up just really quick here. On the main page, if you go all the way to the bottom, we have sign up for our e-news. This is our tools and resources page. I'll show you that in a second. The contact us is going to take you to the how to get access to us through the service portal. The governor has been pretty, he's been pretty adamant that we create this service portal and track phone calls, track contacts, track website touches, because he's very much wants to ensure that the state agencies are being responsive to the public. And so having people access all those resources up front, you know, perhaps it's an easy question that they could find through the FAQs, or perhaps it's an easy question that can be answered quickly by the frontline staff, versus getting all the way to, you know, finding Anna and I and tracking us down. And so essentially we have been, this is, I think, part of the overall transformation of government, but if you want to contact us, it'll take you here. It'll show you our FAQs. You might find a lot of answers to your questions in the FAQs. So we have, where we took this page to is we've already filtered out. So you guys are just looking at water and sewer. So if you want to look at the other FAQs, you'll have to back out of this a little bit, but here's basically all of the FAQs that we have compiled over the course of this short program. I think there's like 180 of them right now. But if you have questions about minimum allocation grants, you can search for minimum. And it'll take you to those FAQs, and you know, there's quite a few of them there. We've been really diligent about tracking questions we receive on all the trainings, and then giving answers, and then publishing those here. So that's just really quick. That was one of the things. Oops, I'll go back here. And then let's see, finally, we have a calendar down here. We're trying to do a better job of populating it, but anytime we have like deadlines, we post them here. So if you're looking for training, that's what we called that, but actually there's a lot more here. So all of the trainings that we have put on are summarized here and linked up here at the top. And when Rebecca gives me the access to this one, I'll post it here as well. We have some information on Submittable, which is our grant application software. So if you need help getting started, we have information on, so that the way that the money came, you know, through the federal government to us was saying, hey, you guys need to use it for drinking water and clean water SRF eligible projects. And so that's how they put the sideboards on what water and sewer are. So here's the link to those two handbooks. If you're curious if your project is eligible, I encourage you to start here and read about that type of project. They're usually about a page per project type. It's not that complicated. So they did a pretty nice job spelling that out. So these are what's eligible for these funds. We did connect with the state library, and they're working on getting us access to LiDAR technology, because there's some federal funding out there for that. We have a bunch of helpful links. All of these are things that are probably embedded in the application somewhere. So we just wanted a place where people could go and, you know, look up that information. There's some census block data for median household income, which might be relevant for conservation districts if applying, because if you're going to do a project in a specific area that's not associated with a town, you right now would choose the median household income for your county. And so if you actually have better data, like maybe it's a subdivision outside of a town, something like that, this is how you could calculate that median household income using a finer filter. And then here's a bunch of documents that we've provided to help people work on these applications, US Treasury guidance, and then acronyms. We try to cram in as many acronyms as humanly possible these days. So that's kind of it for our website, kind of the features on the website, I think. And then let me take you guys back and take you to the minimum allocation page. So minimum allocation, again, so whereas the competitive grants, they expanded the definitions of local government to include irrigation districts, conservation districts, school districts, regional water systems, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas the minimum allocation grants, like Rebecca said, only can go to cities, counties, and towns. And so they took 150 million and they divvied it up based on the gas tax allocation formula, which they call it BARSA sometimes. We don't need to worry about that because we did all the math for you here on this dashboard. So if you're curious about what your county is receiving for the minimum allocation grant, let's say Jeff's on, let's say Valley County. So Valley County for their minimum allocation grant is getting $1.3 million to do, again, this is water and sewer only. So this money is not competitive. They are basically, if they apply for it with an eligible project, they'll get it. So they still, they still have to apply to us. We still have to make sure it's eligible, and then they'll get, $1.3 million to do water and sewer. The match required is 359,000. So this is the amount of money that Valley County has to bring to the table to get this, to access this money. There's no restrictions or requirements or anything on what the source of that match funding. So it could literally come from anywhere. You have to be able to document this with accounting records, I will say that. But it could be in kind, but it could also be, planning money that's already been spent on a project, things like that. We did include the population estimates. We did include the median household income because those are questions on the application. Cities and towns are a separate tab here. And then, what was the town we were talking about yesterday, Anna? Columbus? Was it
Yes, Columbus.
Yeah, so we were trying to figure out how much Columbus was getting. So they're getting $425,000 for a minimum allocation grant. And this is their match that they would have to bring to the table to access that. So really quickly on this table too, just like show you guys, because the GIS folks that work with us are awesome and they put this great tool together for just this application. So one of the questions that we have on the application is lat long and for your project. And so they did this great map for us. So, zoom into your desired location, add the point symbol, and then the coordinates appear in a box. So we'll go to good old GF here. And you take this little thing here. Oops, now if I can put it on the map, I'll select it. There we go. And there's your lat long right there in the upper right hand corner. So this was a really nice little tool they put together very last minute for us. So the minimum allocation grants, again, these have to be to qualifying water and sewer projects. So we did create a, kind of a brief summary list of what are qualifying projects. Still to this day, rehab of dams and reservoirs are ineligible under both the Clean Water and Drinking Water SRF. So we're waiting on further federal guidance on that one. But essentially anything on the water side is associated with drinking water. So when you guys talk about water projects, it's basically everything associated with, public water supplies. It would be, I don't know of anything that's not a public water supply that would be on here. The sewer project. So originally when ARPA was passed, it said, necessary investments in water and sewer. So we were all waiting around trying to figure out what sewer is. Well, sewer is actually the clean water SRF. So there's a lot in here. So there's centralized wastewater treatment, energy conservation, and this has to be related to it has to be related to water quality and water conservation, specifically for wastewater treatment systems. So energy conservation is a little bit confusing for people. We've had a lot of people put energy conservation. This has to be specifically related to wastewater treatment. Stormwater management, agricultural best management practices. There's a lot in here, but irrigation efficiency projects are in here. However, I will say right now, right off the bat, irrigation efficiency projects have to be related to water quality. It can't be an irrigation efficiency project for the sake of getting more acres irrigated, or what was the other one I saw yesterday? It has to, like, you have to have a water quality tie to that irrigation efficiency project. One of the ones that I think is going to be really key in the irrigation efficiency projects that I think will do actually really well is converting open canal to pipe, repairing any facilities that cause significant erosion, or replacing like outdated irrigation structures that, flood fields and contribute sediment or nutrients to surface waters. But also in here, there's a bunch more stuff in here about ag best management practices, like greenways, runoff BMPs, offsite watering. I know we talked about that a lot in the beginning of this, Rebecca. That would be in here. So this is basically anything that would remove point sources of pollution out of, rivers, streams, wetlands. So don't look at this as like, oh, irrigation projects for the sake of irrigation can apply. This is irrigation projects to manage water quality. Decentralized wastewater treatment, which are septic systems. There's money in there to either regionalize those or upgrade and replace, or connect. I think would be really cool if lots of people came in and asked for money to connect their septic systems to a community. There's resource extraction or contaminated sites. So I will say this, that if you have a contaminated site, say the Clark Fork Superfund site, that would be eligible, but it has to be eligible in terms of the same thing like we were talking about earlier with irrigation. You have to have a non-point source, and the project has to serve water quality benefits. So you can't just plug old abandoned gas or oil wells or anything like that. Like everything has to be tied to water quality impacts. Same thing with landfills. So this could be groundwater or surface water. So if they want to replace, failing liners, or if they want to do some sort of leachate collection system, again, landfills has to be tied to water quality. Same with the rest of these things. I will say there's planning and assessment, because I know we've been getting this question a lot, is that I think a lot of people are going to apply for planning and assessment in the competitive grants. And the way the scoring works right now, I just don't think they're going to score very high. But if there's good planning and assessment if there's good planning and assessment going on with conservation districts or watershed groups, I think going to your local county and proposing this as like, hey, we should use your minimum allocation funds for this planning and assessment. Oops, sorry. I think that would be a much smarter way to go, because the way the scoring works right now for the competitive grants is that the highest priority are given to projects that have a direct impact on public health and safety. And so it's like we have communities that have, super high, dangerously high nitrates in their drinking water. That's going to score high. We have communities that have a failing lagoon, next to a major river. That's going to score high. We have communities that have collapsed sewage pipes that are causing backups into people's homes. Like that's going to score high. So if the project that you're looking at is not going to rank high on that health and safety piece, I would look to this opportunity to work with the counties on and, you know, try to access their minimum allocation money. I've not had, I don't know, Anna, I've not had positive reviews on people working with their counties, but I think once counties see what kind of projects get funded in this first round of competitive grants, I think they might change their tune a little bit, because a lot of counties don't have water and sewer themselves. Like they might have some stormwater that they're responsible for, but I think though they're going to see the types of projects they can spend that money on. And remember, these guys got the direct treasury money and they're getting minimum allocation money. What are they going to spend it on? If it's not tied to COVID, it has to be water, sewer, or broadband. And right now we don't even have a broadband program open. So it's like, you know, I think that after they see this first round, they might change their tune a little bit. So, and I don't know if you want to add anything on the counties.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Autumn. We've been working with a lot of folks, and it seems like the cities, towns, and water and sewer districts seem to be very much engaged and on it. And I don't know for the counties, you know, I know, you know, summertime comes and people are busy farming, vacationing, you've got fairs and things like that. So I don't know if at the county level, you know, maybe they just weren't as engaged, because that's what we seem to be finding out. And, you know, for the counties, I think it's important that they hear about these systems and work with them, because, you know, if you've got a little water and sewer district and all of a sudden, you know, they're on administrative order and boil orders because their water, their wells aren't good, their lines are cracked and leaking. You know, if those things dissolve and whatnot, they come back into the lap of the counties. And I think conservation districts are in a good place because you understand the constituency in the county, you understand the problems, and, you know, they may be coming you to help facilitate some of that and working with their county. But that's kind of what we've seen so far in the applications that have come in and the people that have called us. They've been talking to the county, but the county doesn't seem to be able to give them an answer. And, you know, July 15th is the due date for the applications. So we'll see what comes in. And some counties have been great. I know Big Sandy put together a storm sewer project. The city is putting in their minimum allocation and their direct treasury funds. The county, Shoto County, is giving them some of their minimum allocation and some of their direct funds, which is great because that ticks all the boxes, and that project will move forward well ahead of others because they've worked with their county and made people aware of it.
So the other thing is that, and I don't know if it's worth covering the application this morning, but if you download the application guidance, it'll kind of walk you through, and it jumps back and forth between competitive and minimum. I get that, and that's kind of confusing, but essentially for the minimum allocation grants, you don't have to do all these extra questions, but still a lot of the same rules apply. So we tried very hard to separate that out for everyone, but you can jump down here to the minimum allocation grants to local governments, the required match, the award timeline, the deadlines, you know, the pass fail, and then it goes into, you know, what types of projects are eligible. So, and then we do have a worksheet online for people to work on applications, because right now submittable only allows one person, they only allow a person to apply for one grant at a time. And then as soon as they hit submit, they can open another one. So we gave people a worksheet to work kind of like offline to the side. So I will stop there, and I rambled on again for a half hour without even knowing what's going on. So if you guys have questions now, Anna and I can pretty much talk about anything you would like.
I have a question. This is Chris Evans. Back on the match page that you were showing.
This one?
Why are some counties and cities so different as far as amount of match, a percentage of match?
So-
Some are 1-to-1 and some aren't.
Yeah, so the way that match was done for the minimum allocation was the lesser of 1-to-1 or 25% of their local ARPA dollars. And so we just went ahead and did the math for people. We didn't, essentially we didn't want people to, like, match has been like the part of this whole thing. So that's why it's the lesser of the two.
Okay. I just want to give some feedback to you guys. I actually had a very positive response from Lewis and Clark County. I reached out to them a couple of weeks ago when I missed the first webinar, and talked to Ann McCauley, and we talked through the project that we're looking at doing through this, and she immediately said, don't bother with the competitive grant, go with our minimum allocation, and I'll be in touch with you after the 15th. So it sounds to me like there might be disparity out there, but if people reach out to the right person in their county government, it might be a good thing.
No, you're right. Lewis and Clark County has been really good. And I've talked with Ann, I bet 5 times in the last 2 weeks. And she's working with people, but then you'll find others like Yellowstone County and Missoula County, which just don't seem to be engaging with their folks. So.
Well, and similar to when, the local government reimbursement program came out for the CARES Act, and districts had to go through their counties, MACD will work with the Montana Association of Counties if there are any kind of big issues, and try and have MACO kind of reach out to individual counties if districts aren't getting through. But, first of all, districts should try going to their counties and cities and towns, depending on the project, and then we can go from there. So
I would say, Rebecca, that would be a smart move to do regardless, because I think the feedback I've received is that the counties are really confused.
Okay.
And we've not been able to connect with MACO to do any presentations. We've done one for League of Cities. We've had several WASAC meetings, but it's there's a lot of like rumor and speculation going on out there, and the counties, I think, are just really confused. So.
okay.
One
That's
other
good.
thing is the minimum allocation can come in, that we're keeping that open. So, we'll see what comes in July 15th and be able to show people what has come in and what types of projects they're doing. Like Fergus County was really good with Roy Water and Sewer District, and they're going to give them $500,000 of their direct funds and then $500,000 of their minimum allocation and put together a project. So I think kind of we'll have some demonstration models to help people with, and that'll be good. And then hopefully people can, August 1st or August 15th or whatever, put together some of those things and come in, and then we can get them before the commission. Because even with this, the legislation is what the legislation is, and that's what the legislature decided. And we have to present those we have to look at them, review them, make recommendations to the commission. And then the commission is new at this, so they may take a week or a month and say, okay, we approve this, and then they move on their recommendation to the governor. So the other thing is you need to think about planning, because some of the stuff we may not know until September, October, what's approved and awarded. And, so it's just going to take some time to work through that.
And Autumn, I just wanted to say thank you in terms of sharing the bit about the confusion on the county side, because I think that's something that we can engage with MACO on to make sure they know what's coming in from districts. So, okay.
I have a probably somewhat obvious question. So I'm working on a project right now that encompasses a basin with multiple counties, and there's an interest in looking at some of this funding. But it sounds to me that if they were to go for funding through minimum allocation, that funding would need to be spent within that county that it was requested from, or could it be used across neighboring counties?
We have several projects that are going to cross county boundaries.
Oh, okay.
There's
Yeah.
no, there's no like the minute you make a rule like that, it will be broken. So there's
Mhm.
no rules. And we did get a question about, can a county spend money on a reservation? And yes, there's not a lot of restrictions on this money.
To me, the important thing will be get the scope of work down, and then where a county is giving money to a water and sewer district or something like that, we'll make sure that there's an MOU between them, and that, so all of that stuff is kind of directed, or, pointed out who's doing what, who's responsible for what, because we don't want the ball to get dropped. And then there's the reporting that we have to do, that the federal government and the legislature require. So, if you take this money, you've got some responsibility making sure you're procuring things correctly, and who's in charge of that you're reporting to us, and then we can report to the feds. That audits are done, because there's a lot of money in here to audit and make sure the money's spent properly. So just the logistics of working out that kind of stuff will have to go in, those MOUs, and think through that kind of stuff.
I was gonna just say, Anna, that's a really good point, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's one of the things that the counties are not ready for. I don't think the counties are ready for, if they sponsor all these minimum allocation grants, to be reporting and doing all the project management on some of these projects. But if they're going to say the county is going to sponsor a grant application for a water users association or a homeowners association or something like that, and that homeowners association or water users association doesn't have the technical or managerial or financial capacity to spend that money in line with the federal requirements or what we're requiring, like 2 ladies that volunteer on a homeowners association board are not going to be able to follow this, and they probably don't have the procurement requirements in place to do it. So all that's going to fall to the county. So I think that, in hindsight, I wish we would have hammered the interlocal agreements up front and made them part of these applications, because I think it'll, highlight to the county, like, hey, there's a lot of work that has to go into this. And before we apply for money for, a tiny little homeowners association, we may want to figure out, like, oh my gosh, is there going to be a bunch of extra work on our part to do that? And I think that's where conservation districts are uniquely situated, is you guys already know how to follow all these rules and have these structures set up and can track financially all the money that gets spent and provide project management. And so when you guys work with your minimum, or work with the counties on those minimum allocation applications, think very seriously about what you would charge to administer this. It's not going to be extensive amounts of reporting, but we don't have a lot of time to do reporting. So it's going to be like, if it's due on the 15th, it is actually due on the 15th. So we can't screw around and get this wrong. And there's going to be scrutiny on the vendor invoices. There's going to be scrutiny on the reporting, and we'll try to automate that as much as possible on our end and provide training. But you guys already have a leg up to know how to do all this with us. You guys have been working with us for a long time on these. And I don't think that we do get a lot of colonies, for example. Colonies have been really hammering their counties to apply for them. Colonies are not going to have the ability to, they don't have a procurement policy in place. So that's all going to fall on the counties. And I don't think the counties are quite grappling with that yet, is that in order to follow the federal procurement requirements and the state procurement requirements, colonies are not going to be able to do that. So counties are going to have to put either hire people or or allocate resources to oversee these grants. So I think conservation districts are, uniquely situated in that regard to be able to do this.
I've got a question if I can. And thanks Autumn and Ann and Beck for doing this too, by the way. You've answered some of my questions, but just a little bit of a clarification. So if we, as a conservation district, we can work with a a tribal entity, a tribal reservation, I guess, or whatever their government, I guess. But do you have to, if your local county doesn't want to play ball per se, but you found another county that you could work together with, does it have to be a contiguous county, or can you, or a local county that your conservation district in, or can you work with any conservation district county in the state?
Like I said, there's no like geographic requirements for these other than
Okay.
the money.
That's what I thought you said. Yeah.
Yeah, through the BARSA allocation. So, I think that is a really important question. If you're, say, working on a project that's, say you were working on a project in Beaverhead County, but Beaverhead County had other priorities, but it was a significant impact to, say, like Silverbow County or something like that, like downstream. You might have those like, projects that occur in a different county, sponsored by a different county, but it's important for that watershed, for example.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
I was going to say one other thing, Jeff, not to minimize things, or, it's great that if you can work with them, you can. Also remember the tribal governments are getting a fair amount of money also to help them, and conservation districts might be able to help them in some of those other funds that they can use to do some things too. So don't, if you've got a really big project, there may be some other resources there through ARPA where funding is coming to the tribal government that you guys might be able to help with too. So
and we don't know what the rules were for I don't think I've ever been able to figure out if the tribal governments are playing by the same rules as the rest of us. I think they might have some different rules on what their money can go towards. But yeah, I was going to say, if you guys have like a watershed style project, I think I would talk to any of those governments in that, that whole area to see who, and it might be 4 governments put together to do a project. It could be anything. So.
Sure. Okay. All right. Thanks. And you guys are all doing a knockout job. I just really want you to know how much I appreciate, the effort you guys are going through. I know it's a lot of work. So thanks again.
Anytime anyone flushes toilets in the state, it'll thank Anna and I.
This is Judy, and I have a question on just how this all works. Let's say the town of Hysham has a project for the sewer part of the minimum allocation, and they apply. Can the county also apply for their minimum allocation for that same project to help out?
Yes, they can. I wonder if I have one handy, and I might have let me see if I can pull up Big Sandy's, and that'll show you a really good example. Give me 1 second. I'll try to get this open. Big Sandy did a knockout job of leveraging all those resources. Where on earth did I put those? But yeah, they essentially, what they did is they had money that they've already invested in the project, because they've been working on this stormwater project in Big Sandy for a long time. So they had money that the local community has already invested by hiring the engineers and doing the planning. Then they were able to get the Big Sandy spent their minimum allocation, and I can't remember what Big Sandy gets. It was like 120,000 or something like that. It was pretty minimal. But yeah, I think they put in like 150 of their 182 for their minimum allocation. They also used all of their local fiscal recovery funds. So all of that money that came directly from Treasury. Then Choteau County matched this with their part of their minimum allocation, as well as part of their local fiscal recovery funds. And they presented it to us in one budget that showed all of those funds, building together to create, I can't remember what the total on their project is, Anna.
It's about $1 million, I think.
I thought so too. So yeah, so they came up with, you know, $1 million and didn't apply for competitive. They just are looking at that minimum allocation. So it was pretty beautiful little job there that Big Sandy did. So I'm pretty impressed with them.
You know, Autumn talked about that in the competitive. You look at these water quality issues, you look at the health and safety issues. You know, we also look at things like affordability, readiness to proceed, things like that. So if you are doing a competitive grant, all of those things give you points to move forward. You know, conservation, you know, some of the things where I would expect an irrigation district to do well is if they're putting in, you know, saving, you know, they've got really leaky, you know, pipes or canals or things like that, and putting in more efficient pumps, then conservation is where they will score well. But yeah, the applications that we've seen so far, they've really done well in partnering and looking at those things.
Yeah. Yeah, they really did.
But let's see,
Go ahead.
what an irrigation district doesn't directly get funds, though, does it? It has to go through the county.
Right,
And the same way with the conservation district, we don't directly.
right.
But could a conservation district contribute some toward the matching funds that the town of Hysham has to come up with?
Yes. Absolutely. And you would do that by offering a, so when they say, oh, we're going to use this money and this money and this money, and they have all these matching funds lined up, you would just submit a letter or minutes from your meeting that, you know, confirm that you guys are providing funding to support that. So, so here's the budget for the town of Big Sandy, and I'll zoom in on this a little bit so it's not so tiny. So, and I think too, the other thing that's buried in here is I want to say Bear Paw is helping them do the contract administration on this. So yeah, Bear Paw Development is actually going to help them do some of the project management pieces. So there's some kind of money buried in there for that. But so essentially Big Sandy is going to put in their 100,000 of their minimum allocation grant. 35,000 of their local fiscal recovery funds. They did get both a grant from Department of Commerce and DNRC during the last legislative session. Then this is the county's local fiscal recovery fund. So again, this is Choteau County is kicking in 125,000 for the stormwater project, and then the county is giving their minimum allocation grant to Big Sandy, and then that they're contributing 58,000 from their local funds that they've saved up. So they did a really, I think they did a fantastic job of, you know, communicating with their county and trying to leverage this fund. And like I said, this is not a competitive application. So all we have to do is look at it and be like, yep, these are in. So we're able to approve that and hopefully take that in front of the commission before the next meeting.
Yeah. So this is Anna, and something Autumn brought up before, you know, if they didn't have those county funds, again, that Montana, they've changed their name. They used to be the Treasure State Endowment Program. Now they're the Montana Coal Endowment Program and Renewable Resource Grant. Those things, again, can be used towards match for these. If they had local contribution money, that can be used for match. So just remember, you know, like we talked about, you can get match from various places. If people can do some in-kind work, we, you know, hired the clerk and we pay her, you know, $20 an hour, and she's going to put in 10 hours on this. That in-kind service can be used. It needs to be documented, but it can be used for match. So. I was going to say, Autumn, can you pull up one maybe that has a competitive grant? Something that simple. I was going to say, didn't Hysham turn in an application? I don't know.
I haven't seen one yet from Hysham, but I imagine that they will, Judy, because they were in our, they came in for our RGL and TSEP in this last round. So I imagine they'll be in, because I think they were going to go in for a big loan. I think what a lot of these communities are doing is they're taking their budget that they planned on going in for loans for, and they're dumping the loans and asking for the competitive grants. So like I said, I haven't seen one yet. Okay, I think this one might work. So I'm showing you two different budget tables. So just, this is the way our application works, you know, to basically you have to show us what your funding sources are and if they're committed or not committed. And then the second one breaks out the total project cost by what you're going to spend it on. So anyway, this one is a town here in, well, this is Whitehall. Whitehall is putting in for their wastewater system improvements. So they're asking for 439 for the competitive, 220 some for the minimum allocation. They're committing their local fiscal recovery funds to pay for it. So if they're successful, this will be a completely ARPA funded project. It's just that, you know, it's coming out of these different pots or buckets or baskets or hoops at this point. So this one is one that just is all about, you know, the ARPA here.
So did both towns and counties get the local fiscal recovery funds?
Yes.
Hey, one thing to remember about that when you're working on these projects and just timing, you know, if you were the town of Big Sandy or you were the Choteau County and, you know, you got $100,000 in direct treasury funds, what you got is the first check or $50,000 of that June 1, 2021, and then you'll get your second check for the additional $50,000 June 1, 2022. So remember, all that money does not come at once, that the direct treasury funds that those cities, counties, towns get. So, you know, think about that in your timing of things. If you had to borrow money to do something, the ARPA funds cannot reimburse loans. So if you took out a loan to pay for some of this stuff, that can't be reimbursed. If you paid for it, or if the town or city paid for something out of, say, their general fund or their water and sewer fund, then they could come back and ask for reimbursement for that. But if you've got a loan, they won't reimburse that for whatever reason. Those are the federal rules that came down. The state too is under that disbursement situation. So if the state got, you know, $400 million to do water and sewer project work, we got $200,000 of it, you know, June 1, 2021, and we'll get the second tranche is what they call it, second disbursement or tranche of money, June 1, 2022. So
Judy, in the grant application guidance, we published these tables. And I actually talked to our GIS folks yesterday. They're going to update that minimum allocation dashboard, that map. So here's what say Alberton is getting for their minimum allocation grant. And then here's what they're getting in their local fiscal recovery funds. And then we just, like I said, we did the calculation on the match for this amount. But if you were to add these two up, that's what these guys would be getting kind of, you know, essentially directly. They have to apply for this money from us, but they did get this money directly. They got half, like Anna said, in June, and they'll get another half next June. So yeah, there's some pretty big dollar figures. Let's see, what is Hysham getting? You want me to look up Hysham for you?
yeah.
You're gonna make me use the alphabet this early in the morning, Judy? Unfair.
Yeah, that's a chart.
So they're getting, so Hysham would be getting 96,000 in their minimum allocation. Again, they apply from us. Their local fiscal recovery funds is 77,654. So, but again, they can spend this on any of those kind of 6 areas. It doesn't necessarily have to spend it on water and sewer. We have seen some communities committing their whole amount to this. to water and sewer projects, but some have not.
So Autumn, so basically the cash flow on that is half of each of those amounts in the first tranche and then half in the second tranche,
That's right.
correct?
Yes.
And the difference in that is that in the federal local funds that came directly from Treasury, they based theirs, I think, on a calculation of median household income, population, things like that. The minimum allocation that the state dispersed, they used the state BARSA or the state gas tax calculation. So on there, it's how many miles of road do you use? I think population factors in there and things like that. They were just two methods of allocation that aren't the same. So that's one reason why the numbers you look at ISME, they were getting $5,000 in basically 4,800 in direct treasury funds and 33,000 in minimum allocation.
Any other communities you guys want me to look up for you? Like I said, we're going to update the dashboard with this so people can see, what they got out of minimum allocation, what they're getting in their local fiscal recovery funds. And we call this, when you add these two together, we call this their total local ARPA dollars. And so we'll get that hopefully here pretty quick. So Corey didn't think it would take too long to do that. But I mean, look at this. You have some communities like Missoula that are, they could apply for up to $10 million for, water and sewer projects in the city of Missoula, and then Missoula County. So these are just the towns. Missoula County is on the next page. So Missoula County could get 2.8 million from us, and they got 23 million from the feds.
This is Anna. One thing I want people to know that you can use this money for planning also. And if you just feel like you can't, the lift is too hard to get some of this stuff done, try and get some planning money. We're going to, Lindsay Volpe, our program manager on renewable resource in the renewable resource program, will be coming out advertising planning grants.
They're open now, actually, Anna. I was going to say I can show you guys.
Okay, but anyway, remember, we'll have May of 22 and June of 22. That'll be our next around in that time, that next application cycle for grants again. And there may be another infrastructure bill coming. We hear about some of that. So, if somebody has something, they say, oh, darn, we just can't get it together. Start the planning for it, because I think there's going to be some more money coming. And, there may be some changes. Some of these folks that propose something, then maybe for whatever reason, they just can't do it. So maybe some of that money will become available from at the county level or the city level in some of these things. So we've got till January of 2024, I think it is, or December 31st of 2024 to get money obligated, and then it has to be spent by January of 2026. So, one look at it is, boy, that's some time. Another look at it is, boy, that's going to come quick. So think about that.
I was going to say too, Anna, I had this conversation yesterday. Some of the counties are just not going to apply for their minimum allocation grant money, I think. And that money will get rolled into the competitive pool. So if communities, if towns or counties or whatever do not want to apply for this minimum allocation money, that money gets rolled into the competitive pool. So if, counties are just really, dragging their feet and don't want to do this, that's okay. We'll hopefully, move that money around to good projects.
Hey, Autumn, do you know what the timing of that rollover is? Would that be like,
January,
so for each tranche moves?
January of 2023 is when, I think it's January 1st is an Autumn. If they don't come in and have submitted something, like Autumn says, that money goes to the competitive pool. So
does that set up a third round for the competitive pool in 2023?
Well, I don't, and I don't know, Mark, if that's how it'll be, or if we'll just have that kind of, that funding line, that we have. So any projects that fall under that, the funding line, the commission may just want to continue to fund those as minimum allocation money gets turned back.
Okay, sure.
So it could go either way. I don't know. Really, it's just,
Up
that's
to the
kind of one of
commission.
those things that's up to the commission. So,
Well, we're getting close to 8 a.m. It's 7:59. And again, I want to be respectful of people's time. Are there any final questions for Autumn, Anna, or the other DNRC folks on this call? All right. Well, with that, Autumn, Anna, thank you so much, as well as Mark and Mary, for being on this call and sharing about the minimum allocation grant. I will be sending out a recording of this webinar to districts, and as Autumn mentioned, it will also end up on the ARPA Water and Sewer Grants webpage, so you'll be able to access it at various locations. And please feel free to reach out if you have questions. Thank you so much, and thank you for everyone for attending. All right, see ya.
Right.
Thank you.